to the R Plus Canine podcast. I'm Connie Moss, and today I am talking to you about food in dog training. What should you be carrying when you're out on a walk, and why should you be carrying food while you're out on a walk? So first, let's talk about why. Why should you carry food when you're out walking your dog? Well, honestly, whether you're training your dog to walk nice on a leash or whether your dog already walks nice on a leash, it's a tool. It's a tool to help you with your dog while you're out on a walk. It's a tool just like a collar or a leash or a head halter or the remote for a shock collar, a pinch collar, whatever. They're all tools, and food is also a tool, and that's what you're using to help your dog walk nicely on a leash and train them, or to use as maintenance for a dog that already walks well on a leash. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. How much food you use on your walk is really determined about where you are in the training process. Are you just teaching your dog how to walk nice on a leash? In which case, you're going to want to be carrying probably quite a bit of food. Or does your dog already walk really well on a leash? And in that situation, you really only need a handful of food at best, a small handful. And it's not that you're rewarding your dog for nice leash walking, but maybe it's more about rewarding your dog in the moments when they chose to keep leash walking nicely with you instead of chasing the squirrel. That deserves a reward. We're so quick to use tools to punish a dog for doing the wrong thing. I think sometimes we need to be a little quicker about using a tool to reinforce the right behavior. Anytime I see good behavior on the walk, even though my dog knows how to walk, I'm going to whip out a piece of food if she chose to leave a squirrel alone or if she chose to ignore a dog that was barking at her. I'm going to reward that with a little bit of food. So let's talk about how you might carry that food when you're out on a walk. So a lot of people will use a treat pouch. Nothing wrong with a treat pouch, especially if you are in the training process. Sometimes you just need to access that food quickly, and a pouch is usually the best way to go. But a pouch is not always possible, and some people might even argue that a pouch, a training pouch, just distracts a dog. They know, oh, there's food available because you're wearing that food pouch. And when you're not wearing the food pouch, they're going to misbehave because they don't think there's any food available right now. So, pouches are pros and cons for that. I like them, like I said, in the beginning phases of training, but I really kind of get rid of the pouch as quick as possible for that very reason. So what do? I use pockets. Pockets are better. Lots of pockets. Even in the middle of summer, I have shorts with pockets. And if you, for example, can carry a remote control for a collar, for a shock collar in your pocket, then you can carry food in your pocket. It's your choice. And when you're in the house, even though I know we're talking about walking, you obviously don't need to carry a training pouch around in the house, but your training pouch really kind of becomes the refrigerator or a doggy treat jar, which I sometimes tell clients to have around the house, out of reach from the dog, a little candy dish with treats in it for the dog. And that's if you're doing some kind of in-home training. For example, teaching your dog not to jump on visitors. That would be another reason for having little candy dishes around the house full of dog treats. Oh, and make sure your kids, if you have kids, make sure they're not eating those because it's not candy. All right, so let's talk about the hierarchy of food. There is a hierarchy of food in your dog's eyes, and you don't get to decide what that is. Sometimes we will tell clients, based on our experience, we find kibble is usually the least desirable treat for a dog to use in a training process. But then something like steak, that's high-end value for dogs. And usually that is the case for many dogs. But really, the dog makes the decision, not us. So a general hierarchy of food would be starting from the least exciting food, kibble, maybe then cheese or chicken or hot dog and steak, maybe freeze-dried food. So those are all different levels of excitement for your dog. And we always want you, as trainers, we want you to use the least exciting food in that moment. and save the exciting food for really special occasions. It's really important, and I will tell you why in just a minute. I want to jump back to freeze-dried food. There's a good reason I bring that up. I love using freeze-dried food. You can often find all kinds of freeze-dried food: beef liver, chicken liver, salmon, lamb. There's all sorts of freeze-dried proteins out there. They're fabulous because you can put them in your pocket. You don't need to cut them up. They're all ready to go. You just grab a handful, and they're good on countertops or in cookie jars when you're doing that in-home training we were talking about. They're fabulous. They don't go bad. They can stay out. They have a good shelf life. Freeze-dried, in my opinion, is the way to go. And most dogs really like freeze-dried treats. But again, you got to figure out where they fit into your dog's hierarchy of food, and you have to use it appropriately. Don't just be showering the dog with freeze-dried food for everything, because then that exciting food gets kind of boring. Now let's talk about how to deliver the food to your dog. And one of the biggest issues that I see, especially with leash walking, is that people feel like their dogs are biting their hands when they're giving the food, or the dogs are hurting their hands. And especially if you've ever done any training in the winter time when it's cold, you're wearing gloves, it's harder to give out treats. And if you do take the gloves off to treat your dog, you find that often, your hands are so cold that if the dog nips your fingers, it really hurts. So how can you deliver this food? Well, first let's talk about why a dog hurts your hands when you're giving them a treat. Most of the time, it's out of excitement, or what we would say high arousal. The dog is in a high arousal state. It means the dog is super excited. There's something going on in the environment. It could be excited for the positive, and it can be exciting for the negative. So when you are giving treats to your dog, and they're normally taking the treats pretty well, if your dog is grabbing the treats and being kind of tough on your hands and nipping your hands or grabbing your fingers in the process, your dog is overwhelmed in that environment. They're very excited. So it's either likely the environment itself, and you need to go back to something a little bit calmer, or maybe you're too high up on the hierarchy of food. Maybe you're using freeze-dried kibble or steak when you should be using kibble. We see this with a lot of dogs, and I'm not shaming any breed out there, but I see it with a lot of Labradors. You can use kibble for almost everything because those dogs will practically eat paper. And if you bring out steak or chicken while you're leash walking, they're going to take your fingers off because that is so exciting, and they're already excited to eat food. So there's no need to whip out the high value stuff when you could be giving them their own kibble as treats, and they'll work for it. How do you know where to be on that hierarchy? Well, that's what I mentioned at the very beginning. You really want to determine what food is most important to your dog, right? And you need the food to keep you relevant to your dog while you're out leash walking. So while a Labrador can work for kibble out on a leash walk, maybe let's say, a Greyhound won't work for kibble out on a walk, but maybe that Greyhound will work for a little bit of steak. So you need to figure out what food is least exciting but still relevant for your dog in the situation. And often when you're out walking your dog, I would recommend you take a couple of different kinds of foods with you so that you can change as you're going through your walk. So anyway, back to talking about your hands. You need to figure out the food that's appropriate, that is not going to get your dog too excited where they're going to hurt your hand. So choose wisely from the hierarchy there. And remember that distracting food can be so exciting that the dog is just going to grab your hands along with the food. Also, your hand position. So when you're out on a walk and you're feeding your dog, rewarding them for good manners or good behavior, really best to use the hand closest to the dog. Because if you're reaching across your body to reinforce that dog with a piece of food, the dog will, as all dogs do, try to predict where the food is going to be and then go meet the food where they think it might show up. So they get pretty smart about this. If your pouch is over on the far side of your body from your dog, and you use that hand that's on the opposite side of your body from your dog pretty soon is going to start cutting you off, going in front of you to get to the food quicker. So it's best to use a pouch that's close to the dog or a pocket that's close to the dog, and use the hand close to the dog as well. It also reinforces the dog staying in that position on that side of your body, whether it's the left or the right. An open hand is another tip we can tell you about protecting your hands from your dog. When you give the treat, put the treat in the middle of your hand, in the palm of your hand, and then present your hand open to the dog so they can just pluck the treat out of the center of your hand. Usually that's going to save your fingers. Now, if it's really cold outside and it's the winter time and you have gloves on, you may want to consider a couple other options. If it's too cold for you to take off your gloves and feed treats, you can use a frozen Kong for your dog to lick. And yeah, I know it's cold and you're using a frozen food, but most dogs don't seem to be bothered by that. So if you get a frozen Kong, you can put some peanut butter in it or plain yogurt. You can mix yogurt and peanut butter. You can put liverwurst in it and freeze it. And then you can just hold the Kong with your gloves on and give your dog a couple of licks each time you want to reinforce. And you can put it in your pocket as well. An alternative would be a squeeze tube. You can buy those on Amazon, for example, refillable squeeze tubes or camping tubes. Looks like a toothpaste tube, but it's refillable. You can also fill that with liverwurst or yogurt or peanut butter, any mix of those things, wet dog food that is very liquidy, all kinds of stuff. And then you can squeeze out little amounts that your dog can lick out of the squeeze tube. They're refillable. If you don't want to do a squeeze tube, one of our favorite emergency treats, lickable cat treats. You can buy them everywhere these days, and you can just tear off the opening and just squeeze out little amounts for your dog to lick. So those are different options for feeding your dog while out on a walk. And remember, as your dog gets better, you're not going to need as many treats. Nowadays, when I walk my dogs, I pretty much only use a handful. And like I said in the beginning, I'm just reinforcing the extra good behavior, or if I feel like being particularly generous. Good luck out there. Try some of these ideas. Let us know how they work for you, or let us know if you have some other idea that we didn't talk about today. Happy training and happy walking.